There's a new governor starting in March, and at the same time he'll sign a new policy agreement which could change the framework or the way monetary policy operates in New Zealand.
Well, Imre, thank you for joining us on the line all the way from New Zealand. Now, it's been a very interesting time in the news for New Zealand. So we have a new New Zealand government. So what does this mean for both politics, and it's a very exciting time for the economic policies also. So can you talk us through some of the economic policies that we are seeing coming out of New Zealand?
Yeah, right here and now, it's still a little bit uncertain. The government in the lead up to the election, which was in September, and then after it was formed in October as a coalition, it did give us an outline of the kind of policies that they want to put in place. So the economy will probably slow a little bit during the year ahead, and then in the year or two afterwards will speed up as a result of this new government's policies. The thing that's going to probably slow it down in the next year are mainly around migration and housing. So it has proposed some rule changes and potential tax changes to the housing market, which will slow it down a bit. And at the same time, it wants to slow down immigration, which is already starting to slow from a peak. But what the new government is talking about would speed up that decline. So the slowdown in migration, the slowdown in the housing markets, we think would have probably a slight negative impact on inflation, and in turn, that poses downside risk for interest rates, which in turn poses downside risks for the Kiwi dollar. So for the year ahead, we're seeing it as a slight negative for the economy and also for the exchange rate, therefore. Beyond that, though, the main initiative this government wants to enact is on fiscal reform, and they are proposing some fiscal stimulus, which is significant over the next 3 or 4 years. That would have the effect of boosting inflation slightly and boosting the exchange rate ultimately as well. So we're seeing it really as a government of two halves, if you like. For the first year or so, things will be a bit slower, and for the latter part of the period, a little bit faster.
And another question mark that we do see looming over New Zealand at the moment is the new RBNZ Governor. So what kind of risks does this pose? Because it is critical, obviously, that the newly appointed governor will make a significant difference with the economic policies. What kind of risks do we see holding over New Zealand with this one?
There's a new governor starting in March, and at the same time he'll sign a new policy agreement, which could change the framework or the way monetary policy operates in New Zealand. Now, I'll start with the second one. We don't think that the changes that the government's talked about to date, which is mainly around putting an extra target in there in addition to inflation. They're talking about putting some kind of employment target, but not specifying it with a number. So it would really just be a set of words about paying heed to a solid labour market. That change to the policy target agreement, we think, would be fairly minor and really in the long run wouldn't have a hell of a lot of difference it wouldn't actually pose much of a risk for monetary policy from what you have now. We think potentially the bigger risk is from the person who's appointed as a governor. You'll either end up with someone who's very neutral or someone who's potentially biased in a hawkish or dovish direction, as you get in central bank heads all around the world. So we don't know who this new governor might be. They will have to be appointed by March, but until then, the appointment process is underway, or the selection process is underway, and until we get an idea of who that person is, we wouldn't be able to judge whether it's a positive or negative ultimately for interest rates or the Kiwi dollar. But it is a risk that we're just keeping an eye on.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the line all the way from New Zealand. It was a pleasure to hear your insights.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that's all from us here in the Geneva studios, but we want to hear how you found this interview, so please do like and comment on dukascopy.tv.